Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about how I get jobs as a freelancer. If you're new here and you don't know me, my name is Dustin. I work mostly in the commercial film industry, doing a lot of different roles, and we'll talk about what those are specifically once we jump into the video. I've been freelancing as my full-time job since January. It's now September 27th, so for almost exactly 9 months, I have had no other income except for freelance video work. I worked in an advertising agency for 2 years before that, and I've always been interested in doing freelance, and one thing I always thought about was like, how do I get enough jobs consistently to pay my bills and survive? Getting a job here and there is relatively easy, even some higher paying ones, but it's always scary to be like, okay, even if you make $5,000 one month, how are you gonna make money the next month? But yeah, I just wanted to run y'all through, I guess, my pipeline and how I set myself up or have been set up to get enough jobs to pay my bills. I hope it's helpful and realistic. I tried when I was writing this one out to make sure that I was being realistic and not like, yeah, you'll have 20 jobs by next week if you do all these things. But what I'm gonna run you through has allowed me to make more than I was making at my salary job and do it pretty comfortably and stably as a freelancer. With all that said, let's jump into it. Okay, so first let's talk about what the heck I actually do for work. Number one is I direct and shoot and create content directly for other companies. These companies will reach out to me, or I'll already have a pre-existing relationship with them. They'll be like, hey, we need some videos. What do you think about these ideas? What do you think about a quote? I'll put together some kind of quote or package. I'll shoot it, I'll edit it, I'll color it. The usual like videographer, cinematographer, one-man band kind of work that I'm sure you know about. Those jobs are great. They probably bring in the most money at one time, but they're also the most work and the most responsibility because I'm needing to talk to the client, do all the creative, do all the editing. Thankfully, some of those things have turned into bigger jobs. I actually did my biggest job of all time last month, and I got to hire a lighting team, a co-producer, and first AD. I had a first AC, I had a food stylist, she had an assistant, we had a PA. It was freaking awesome. It was a lot. And to give you an idea of consistency levels, I think I've done 3 of those jobs where it's just me organizing the whole thing, working directly with the client. I think I've done 3 or 4 of those the whole year. So that would average out to 1 every 3 months or so. I would like to dive into those jobs specifically in another video, do some behind the scenes, give you all the information that I learned from them because I am learning a freaking lot. I've learned so much just this year. It makes me feel I am an amateur, but it makes me realize that I'm an amateur. Let's move on to the second and the most consistent way that I make money, and that's working for other people. So duh, like that's all kinds of work mostly. But what I mean is operating as a PA, a first AC, or any kind of assist on someone else's production job. That person is normally my friend Aaron, who hires me for a lot of things. Thank you, Aaron, you're the freaking best. And then along with that, I'll get hired out by other people that are doing production work that either are ahead of me as far as experience, getting bigger budgets than me, or on the same level and just needing to kind of pass off and delegate roles because you don't always have to do everything by yourself, you know? Okay, so let's talk about what you're probably watching this video for. How did I get to the point where I have these consistent jobs and I'm able to make a living freelancing? Last disclaimer before we jump in, this is based on my personal experience and is probably affected by multiple circumstances, including where I live. So I live in Birmingham, Alabama, which is not a massive city, but it is one of the biggest cities in Alabama. And there's a pretty decent flow of commercial video work going on here. So if you live somewhere way more rural, it might be a little bit harder to get these jobs going and do things in this way. Granted, you know, there's always kind of a city near you and you might have to drive, but this may be easier or harder depending on the size of the city you live in. So take it with a grain of salt, but let's jump into the actual valuable information that you're here to get. So number one is build your skills, get better at your craft. And of course, duh, you're probably doing this. It's kind of hard not to, it just happens naturally over time. But I did want to touch on a few aspects of getting better at your craft. And time is the first one. So I guess I started officially doing video stuff in 2018. It's now 2022. It took me 4 years to be able to be a freelancer and go out on my own and make enough money to support myself and my family. And that is totally okay. It's a pretty short amount of time now that I'm on this side of it. It's okay if it's taking a long time. I remember when I first started, I was super hungry, super passionate. I mean, making videos was like my whole identity, and I kind of sucked at it because I just started, but it's all I wanted to do, which is totally okay. But just know it's okay when that wears off too. All I'm saying is, even when the passion and the hunger wears off its initial intensity, keep getting better, keep learning at whatever pace feels good for you. So I'm sure you probably started this because you enjoyed it. Try to hold on to the parts that you enjoy. So build your skills and be okay that it might take time. And on a more physical, applicable note, make things. You need a reel, you need a portfolio, you need to show people around you that you are doing this thing, that you're working, that you're creating things, you're improving, you're active in the industry, and that you're ready to be hired. So like I said, this is all based on my experience up to this point. So with each part, I'll tell you what I did at that point in my career. I don't know why, it is a career. I don't know why I incorrectly use air quotes. But for this one, like I said, I started in 2018, watching Peter McKinnon and Matty Hapoya videos. I made a bunch of personal social pieces. I made YouTube videos for Instagram. I started getting a few freelance jobs here and there. And eventually I got hired at a local marketing agency. And it doesn't always happen like this, but I got a DM and was like, hey, you wanna work at this company with us and do video stuff? I said yes. I did that for about a year, and the whole time just continued trying to get better and grow my skills. But that kind of seeps in to part 2. So let's go ahead and jump into number 2, growing your community and growing in your community. This part is basically about networking. So back to kind of my storyline, I was working at this agency, learning a lot, growing a lot, being frustrated a lot, but most importantly, at least for this segment, meeting a lot of people. Before I started working at an agency in Birmingham, I didn't even know what an agency was, and that we had probably have 15 in Birmingham. I continued working at that first agency and doing personal projects on the side, and eventually I started reaching out to people from another agency in town, one that I really wanted to work with. Hilariously enough, and I know I've talked about this in my I quit my job video, but hilariously, Aaron is always the pillar of me having a career. While I was at the first agency, I worked with Aaron doing other freelance jobs, just kind of here and there. One day he reached out to me, he was like, hey, would you be interested in a full-time video position? He was asking for a friend. I said yes, of course. I was about to graduate school and I needed a job. Funnily enough, it was the very agency that I had tried to apply for and tried to reach out to for the past few months. Long story short, I got hired on there, worked there for 2 years, and the entire time, not only was I growing my skill and learning like we talked about earlier, but I was meeting some amazing people. My immediate team, just 10 out of 10 human beings, but also they know other people in the industry, especially in Birmingham. So maybe someone would reach out to them. Do you have anyone who could do this for this price? Yeah, Dustin would do that. You know, it's all like a trickle down. It's all a web. I don't do graphics, so I'm not gonna put in graphics, but just imagine a web, you meet this person knows 5 other people, so now you're kind of connected to these 5 other people. You know how society works. I don't know. So how can you build and grow in your community? I would say, number 1, attend events, networking events, creative events, anything that has to do with your industry. Birmingham specifically is big enough to have a lot of work, but small enough where you're most likely gonna keep seeing the same faces. The second way of building and growing in your community, I would say, is see if there are agencies or production companies around you. You don't have to be a freelancer from the very get-go, and it's actually really helpful to work for a company, see how everything works, and also meet people in your industry. A lot of these bigger set jobs are a client hires an agency hires everyone on production, whether they're freelancers or production companies. So all of the same people are working on all these different sets, and working at an agency is kind of a little bit of a cheat code. I mean, it's not always the best thing in the world, but that's not what we're talking about in this video. I'm just saying it's how I kind of built my community. It's how I got to know people working in the industry and got kind of direct teachings from the people who worked above me at the agency. Before we move on to part 3, I will give my kind of networking warning, and this is a personal opinion. It might not be for everyone, but I really dislike the whole, I'm hungry and I'm out here to network and all I care about is business and all we're gonna talk about is work and how you can get me money. There's nothing wrong with being passionate. There's nothing wrong with trying to build your career. But I feel like you can always kind of tell when someone is always working an angle or trying to embody the gross side of networking. And maybe those people make the most money. I don't know. I personally am not one of those people. I feel like I have been in the past, and I don't like getting into this mindset of dehumanizing the industry and like the work that we do. It's a very human industry, and at least in my mind, it's kind of inevitable that that passion and hunger will wear off at a point, and you're only gonna be left with the relationships that you made. Sometimes people just wanna be talked to and not be kind of sold or worked or try to have money siphoned out of them. That's why I titled this section Growing Your Community, Not Growing Your Network. I would say just focus on building relationships with people. Everyone you work with is a real person if they make $1 million a year or $40,000 a year. They're just a person. Someone told me, I think it was Aaron that told me this, do a good job and be a pleasure to work with and you'll keep getting hired. Like really, I could just say that and then end the video. Do a good job, be a pleasure to work with. So part 3 is humility. Just being humble. Be willing to work a lower position on set. Be willing to edit someone's crappy video that they sent you because they shot it on a bad camera or something. Of course, like only take the jobs that you think are worth it, worth the money, worth the time. But I feel like I've gone through phases where I'm like, oh no, that job's beneath me. I've already passed that step, and I will not lower myself back down to be like a PA on a set. I came up in this one-man band, small crew, like learned off YouTube, Daniel Schiffer style cinematography. In my head, I could like take my Sony, make a video, make a commercial, get paid, I don't know, like $1,000, a couple $1,000, and be done with it. So when I started getting on sets and getting paid a PA rate, which it's a lot lower, it goes a lot better if you have a level of humility to be like, okay, this is what I'm here for. This is what they need, and they most likely know more than me. So PA is technically the lowest on production on any set, but it is literally the cheat code to learning how to do filmmaking. Because if you're a PA, you have the least responsibility and you have access to freaking experts. You have access to the lighting crew, you have access to the camera crew, you have access to pretty much everyone. Even if it's like a super serious set and you're not supposed to talk, you're just supposed to like do your PA job, you can still just watch. Absolute cheat code. I've talked to gaffers who have explained to me on set what a gaffer even is, or what a grip even is, and why they do certain things the way they do. I was on a set about a month ago where I was operating as a first AC, and one of the grips there actually fully operates as a second AC on film sets and way bigger things than I'm used to. And instead of me being like, well, I'm the first AC, I'm not gonna listen to you, he was extremely helpful, teaching me things that I had no idea how to do, helping me out outside of his responsibilities and outside of his paycheck. People are freaking great, but if I would have gone in with the attitude of like, no, I'm the first AC, don't talk to me, you're not on camera crew, blah, 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 I know what I'm doing. One, I would not have learned the things that I learned from this guy. And two, I wouldn't have had a friend because literally he's a cool guy. 2 weeks later, I hired him for another job. That's another good example. On the big job that I shot last month, I was the director, the DP, co-producer, but I was well aware that almost everyone there on that set was smarter than me, more experienced than me, had much more knowledge than me. So even when you're literally at the top of the call sheet, don't forget to be humble and understand other people's experiences. Like it really just comes down to do a good job, be a pleasure to work with. And last thing on the humility, no matter what position you're being hired for, even if you feel like it's below your skill set or below your standards, just show up, do a good job, be there to support everyone that you're supposed to support, maybe a little extra if you feel like it. Basically, the culmination of everything I've said is that people are amazing and a lot of people have shown me a lot of support. So thank you. If you're watching this, shout out to you. You know who you are. Thank you for being gracious with your time, with your knowledge. You don't have to do that, but you did. You're the best. Final conclusion, let's break it down. Number 1, started making stuff and building my skill and craft in 2018. 2, worked in an agency, built my network, built my community, met a lot of great people and got my name in their heads and their name in my head. So all of that leads to now where I'm freelancing full-time, at least once a week, maybe multiple times. I get a message from someone I've previously worked for that'll say, hey, do you want to jump on this gig? Are you free these dates? Or from someone I've never heard of, but they're like, hey, blah, 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 gave me your name. I'd love to work with you. What do you think about this project? And I'm thankfully at the point where a lot of them I can say no to because I have plenty, for now at least. I hope this helps y'all. If you have any questions, literally drop it in the comments down below. DM me on Instagram, let's chat. It's really helpful when you can talk to someone, not saying I'm an expert or have all the answers, but it's really helpful to just ask someone instead of trying to guess, which I've done a lot of. So drop your questions in the comments. If there's anything in this kind of realm of freelancing and making money and doing video work that you want me to make a video about, drop that in the comments as well. I would love to talk about it, and I hope you are doing good. This was fun. I talked a lot. If this video is shorter than 15 minutes, just know I worked hard. All right, bye y'all.